carved stone or stela describing the long count calendar was discovered at Ixapa in Mexico. It shows the center of the Milky Way, the celestial pole, and the sun deity. Why was this important to the Mayans?
It's really a beautiful and profound way of conceiving time. And in my research, as I've looked at Ixapa, the origin place of the 2012 calendar, I've been able to see how the Mayan wisdom, it's not just some provincial belief system of a forgotten people. It actually is like a little doorway that opens up into the great spiritual insights that all of the great traditions share. In Egypt, in India, Islam, all the world's great spiritual traditions share these same universal, eternal spiritual principles. And it has to do with cycle endings.
Just like the cycles of birth, life, and death, within the 26,000-year cycle, referred to as the Great Year, there are extended periods of darkness and light. These are divided into distinct ages, known as the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age.
The ancients themselves told us that history, mankind would go into a dark age. 4,000, 5,000 years ago, they view the past as the Golden Age. They see themselves moving into the Dark Age, and they dread it because they know that things are going to get worse, they're going to get chaotic. Cultures all around the world are talking about this pre-Dark Age, that things are going downhill.
I really ascribe to the Mayan and the Hindu idea that the Golden Age, the time of connection into the divine wisdom, was actually a long time ago. And we've been moving through periods of increasing densification, increasing alienation from the spiritual light.
Golden Ages are times of enlightenment, when civilizations reach high points in architecture, spirituality, and benevolence. This is considered to decline slightly in the Silver Age, further deteriorating in the Bronze Age, and reaching extreme levels of chaos, corruption, and ignorance in the Iron Age or Dark Age. Then the cycle works its way back up to the next Golden Age. One of the ways to measure the 26,000-year Yuga cycles is through the ages of the zodiac, which the ancient Egyptians clearly understood.
The origin of the zodiacal signs is a very good question, actually, and probably impossible to determine. The only one of the signs that vaguely looks like what it's supposed to is Leo the lion. The stars making up Virgo definitely don't look like a virgin, whatever a virgin looks like these days. And the other signs are equally mysterious, the crab, the bull, etc., etc. Knowledge of precession and advanced astronomy existed in extremely distant times. The basis of the signs themselves, in terms of zodiac, the wheel of life or the wheel of animals, there are different translations of that. I mean, if you really want to know what the signs signify, you have to go into the qualities and properties of the signs themselves. In other words, each sign is male or female. Each sign is fire, earth, air, water.
Each of the 12 signs of the zodiac has distinct energies. There are 4 elements: earth or material signs, air or intellectual signs, water or emotional signs, and fire or creative signs. By looking at the 12 zodiacal ages of about 2,000 years each, we can rethink the Egyptians' concepts of time and recreate the chronology.
There's a gap in our historical record.
The Palermo stone and the Turin papyrus are evidence from the Egyptians themselves and convey information from rulers far back in Egyptian history.
And they give the regnal years and the name of each of these rulers. And when you compute all of those names and put the numbers together, you get a date somewhere around 36,000 BC. At the same time, roughly, that 34,000 year date corresponds to the Vedas of India, the Vedic civilization of India, which also gives a date which, when you work it out, comes out to something like 40,000 years before our current era. So we have two great sophisticated civilizations that have documented their own belief that their civilization started back around that kind of time.
It is interesting to note that this is roughly 1.5 precessional cycles ago, dating back to a previous golden age.
The Sphinx, with its lion body, screams out as a Leo symbol, as a marker for an age of Leo. The last age of Leo had its ingress at around 10,500 BC. So that's the date favored by Graham and by Robert Bauval. I'm hesitant to accept that date myself because the last ice age comes to a catastrophic end somewhere around 11,500 BC. I mean, it certainly followed, and this is known, there are the quaternary extinctions. All the mammoths and the woolly rhinoceroses die all over the world. Siberia, which was temperate, becomes tundra and Arctic. North America, which was under a couple of miles of ice sheet, melts, and all that water goes into the sea. The sea rises 300 feet over the course of a couple of thousand years, but in stages, and some of those stages very precipitous, maybe corresponding to the biblical flood and possibly Plato's Atlantis myth. So under these circumstances, which are catastrophic the world over, to me, it seems unlikely that the Sphinx and the pyramids, which presuppose a settled and stable and sophisticated society, could have built those amazing structures under those kinds of conditions. So that leaves anything before 10,500 BC, but I like the idea of the Leo symbolism. So the next age of Leo back is 26,000 years earlier, and that puts it back at around 36,000 BC, which, outrageous as it sounds, by a process of exclusion, turns out to be maybe less outrageous because there are big problems with those other later dates.
Looking at the weathering on the Sphinx and the Sphinx enclosure, that weathering was clearly formed by runoff from precipitation.
It is indeed water weathering and precipitation induced, so it has to have been done in the distant past, and the question then is, how distant was that past?
It could take tens of thousands of years for the Nile to have migrated 8 miles. Can we use this evidence to redate these monuments?
When you look at geology, you can see that the riverbed has migrated all the way from the west, beyond 50 kilometers to the west. Then it passed across the plateau, and you can see that the ancient riverbed actually went right up to the pyramids, and the initiates could have stepped right off these barges up onto the causeways into the pyramids. Now, if you look, the Nile is a full 8 miles to the east, and it's the dividing point between Cairo and Giza. And so if we look at geological time, it would take several tens of thousands of years in order for the Nile to make that migration. We can compare that to places like Tiahuanaco in Bolivia that almost certainly was on the edge of Lake Titicaca, and now it's 50 miles away. So it changes the whole idea of how ancient these places could have been.
How many thousands of years does it take for a river to make this huge journey? The oases of El Khaga and Fayoum run parallel to the Nile today, but 100 kilometers west. It seems that the river migrated all the way from here to its current course. Evidence of ancient human settlements has been found in the area that is now desert, but once had water. At these locations are stone circles, indicating a knowledge of astronomy. What does it tell us about the distant past? What can we conclude about the dating of the pyramids and the Sphinx?
And all I can really say at this point, given the data I have, is that I think it has to be at least back to 5000 BC. Could it be older? In fact, might it well be older? Yes. Generally, if sort of pressed for dates, I'll say my best estimate is somewhere in the period of 7000 to 5000 BC. So that's really a working range that I'm comfortable with.